Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And it's Jeremy from Tested.
And we are here at Sony's PlayStation VR launch event. Well, their announcement event, because they just announced when the VR headset's going to come out.
And the price.
And the price. So it's coming out in October of this year, 2016, and the price is $399, or basically $400.
For the headset, the Breakout Box, probably some headphones.
Earbuds.
Yes, but not necessarily for the wands and not for the camera.
Not for those at all, I think. So they showed a picture on stage of what you would get in the box, and as expected, the headset looks just like, almost very similar to what we saw with the later versions of Project Morpheus. It's that kind of headband style headset. There's going to be a button in the back to loosen it up for easy comfort. You're going to feel it on your head like a hat, not like a mask, not like a ski goggles or anything. And then there's a button on the side of the headset that will let you focus it and push it in front. So some of the interesting things, it still uses like a rubber gasket that pushes against your face but doesn't press against your face. That's just to block out outside light. 5.7-inch 1080p OLED panel. They really emphasized the full RGB.
Right,
so
which means RGB for every pixel, unlike pen tile displays, right?
That's right. So hopefully you will notice even less of a screen door effect, even though it's technically a lower resolution because it's full RGB. And of course with the Breakout Box. So it comes out of the PS4, you connect the PS4 to this Breakout Box, video box, which then splits off to your TV and then goes to your headset. And that then gives you the 120 hertz refresh rate on the headset.
So that Breakout Box is an up converter to 120 hertz?
That's what I believe, because I don't believe that the PS4 can natively output at 100 and render at 120 frames per second, at least not at 1080p with these kind of graphics.
The headset, they did say, will support 90 or 120, depending on whatever developers want to support.
And of course, with these, we know that 90 is kind of that minimum barrier to feel comfortable and to feel present in a game.
That's what Oculus and Vive are supporting, is 90 hertz.
That's right, 90 hertz. With the controllers, the existing DualShock controller is already tracked, right? It has gyro inside, there are IMUs inside. There's a light on it so the PSI camera can see it. So if you're playing games and they're PS Toy or whatever, the demo room game, that's going to come for free.
Playroom VR.
Playroom VR, that's what it's called. It's going to come for free. You'll download it as soon as you plug in your headset. So you get to see the controller, you get to go inside the controller, do all kind of stuff.
I think that's pretty cool. I mean, that's something that they get for free. Even if you don't have the PlayStation Move controllers, the basic PlayStation 4 controller will be able to be tracked in VR in Z space and rotation. You'll be able to see it more or less. So they'll be able to use that in the game to indicate where the interfaces are, what buttons you want to press. That's going to be pretty handy.
It's abstracted hand presence at that point, because your hand is holding a controller. But you want more hand presence, you're going to need the Move controllers. Now the PS3 has the Move controllers. They've been out for so long. I think they're like $25 a pop right now on Amazon. You can buy them even cheaper used. The price is probably going to steady once PSVR comes out, because everyone's going to want one. So if you're going to invest in PSVR, you have a PS4 already, make sure you get those Move controllers. The camera is going to be that existing PSI camera.
Camera's $50.
$50. So if you add it all up, it's $400 for the headset, $350 for a PS4, $25 each. It's going to end up being around $850 or so, all in.
Yeah, but that's with a computer,
With the system.
You're paying almost the same for a Vive or an Oculus without the computer. So that's pretty compelling.
Now they also announced a lot of developers are working with for launch titles come October. A lot of things we've seen already on existing VR platforms, things like Job Simulator, Waltz of the Wizard, but also some exclusives as well. Hypnocube, Hypercube, something for PlayStation, and they also announced Star Wars.
Yeah, some Battlefront spin-off. That's really exciting, but they didn't announce anything about it.
Nothing else.
Just that there is something, and they'll be
EA,
announcing later this year.
It's DICE. And so maybe at E3 we'll see something.
I hope so.
Well, we're going to chat with Richard Marks of Sony PlayStation. He's the one who runs PlayStation's Magic Lab, the group that made PlayStation VR.
He worked on Move too. I mean, he's been around for a long time.
And we're going to play some games, give you some impressions, and give you a sense of what PSVR is all about. So I'm joined here now by Dr. Richard Marks, who's director of Sony PlayStation's Magic Lab. You guys brought PlayStation VR to reality from Project Morpheus. How does it feel to finally show the final hardware and have a price and date announced?
Well, just to set the record straight, I mean, lots of people have brought this to market. We did a lot of the early work, but so many parts of our company are contributing to this, and it's really excited to see it culminate now into final release date and price and everything, what's going to be in the box. That's great to see.
What I also like is not a lot has changed. Like, you got the fundamentals down early in terms of the ergonomics. When we first saw Morpheus, in terms of the way the head strap was designed, the button, the way it would use move controllers, those are fundamentals that you guys knew had locked in. And maybe things like the panel changed over time and stuff like that. But like, you guys are happy with the hardware, and this is what you guys set out to do?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely knew that we wanted this to be product that worked with PlayStation 4. So we wanted it to be a mass market product. So that's why comfort and things like that matter so much. I mean, if you're going to make a consumer electronics product, you have to do those things. So from the very beginning, that's how our company has always worked. So it's just basically doing what we always do in a new product.
Being able to control end-to-end the system, that you know with exactly what the performance is going to be on the hardware that over 35 million PS4 owners currently have, that allows you to lock down those specs. Now let's talk about the hardware a little bit, what people get for $399 when it comes on sale in October. You get the headset, you get a Breakout Box, you get some cables. Do you get PlayStation Eye, the new PlayStation Eye, or the move controllers, any of that?
No, so you do get some earbud headphones that you can use with it, but you can also use your own headphones if you wish. There's a headphones jack that you can just plug in.
It's like a Breakout Box or onto the headset itself?
It's on the kind of cable here where the power switch is on your cable. So there's a little headphones jack there for either earbuds that come with it or your own headphones. And then it does not come with the PlayStation camera, as you asked. But that's because, I mean, we do know that many of our best customers already have a PlayStation camera. They don't need another PlayStation camera for this product. So we wanted to make it possible for them to get what they would need. And in the future, we're going to talk more about bundles in the future. But right now, this is the kind of base system.
If people are looking for older PlayStation cameras, like the newest model, obviously, and maybe the PS3 Move controllers, those will be the ones that are compatible with PlayStation VR. There's not going to be new controllers or a whole new camera when it comes out in October?
No, the systems that work now are the PlayStation Move and the PlayStation camera will work flawlessly with the PlayStation VR system.
$399, it's a great price point, especially compared to what the investment might be for other platforms, other systems. Where does that price get distributed? Do you treat it like, as a new console where you have to price it close to what the manufacturing cost is and make money on games, or is there money made in hardware? Where does that cost go?
Well, I mean, our goal as a company is always to bring our products to as many people as possible. These great experiences that our developers make, we want them to be possible, and you have to have the hardware in order to experience those. So our goal is always to keep the price of the hardware as low as we possibly can. Just like we do with PlayStation 4, we're taking that same mentality in to try to make the PlayStation VR just like this. So all these guys' work will get to be shared by the world.
There is an AV Breakout Box. Can you tell me what that does and how that helps PlayStation VR actually work? Is it about the 120 hertz? Is it about the asymmetrical rendering? What does it do?
Sure. I mean, the explanation gets a little complicated, but the simple idea is that you need to plug something into your headset, the PlayStation 4, but you also need to send something to the television. So at a minimum, we need to take what's coming out of the PlayStation and split it, one for the headset, one to your television. So that's the simplest thing it does. In order to do that, since it is 120 frames per second signal, or 90 frames per second signal that's coming out of the PlayStation, that box has to do a little bit of stuff to make it go back and be ready for a TV again. It started as something that's good for the headset, but we need to make it also show up on the TV. So that box undoes what we've done to make it work for VR, kind of.
So it's, again, rendering at 90 frames per second. Those games, that's your target, and then it gets bumped up to 120 hertz.
So you can render at 60 on the PlayStation 4, and then it'll get bumped up to 120, or you can just render at 90, and it'll stay at 90 all the way through the system. So the panel can also do 90, so it's either way.
One of the great things I think about PlayStation VR is that the PlayStation 4 is already in living rooms. You get the natural social experience, and a lot of developers you're working with have been making games that have asymmetrical experiences. People playing on the couch, looking at the TV, while one person's wearing PSVR. How does that tax the rendering, and does that limit the type of games people can make?
Well, I mean, always game developers have a choice of how much CPU and GPU they use for whatever they're doing. So you can use it for just graphics, you can use it for computation, physics, whatever you want. So, I mean, asymmetric, you are rendering another image separately to the TV, so it is going to cost some GPU. However, it is a lower frame rate necessary compared to what you're doing with VR, and you can be clever. It might be an over kind of map view that you're showing anyway, so it's not necessarily always the same kind of graphics that you'd want on that image. But definitely, you get to budget yourself where you want to devote your GPU cycles and things.
And be efficient about the pipeline so you can reuse as many as the assets in the buffer and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, I guess every game developer will do this differently, and we're really looking forward to seeing how this all plays out, because we just want to give them a really good set of tools and then they can build stuff with it. I think that we've already seen a lot of creative ideas using the asymmetric play, and I think we'll just see lots more in the future.
Another advantage is that the actual controller, DualShock controller, is itself tracked. What are the interesting things that people are doing with that? If they want to develop a game that doesn't use move controllers, but you have the floating controller in your field of view?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot of creative things you can do with this idea of tracking anything. So the moves, a lot of people use those for hands. But with the DualShock, it's a really great kind of flight controller for sure. That's what it's used in a lot of games already. So using the sticks and navigation. Now, if you think about, once in a while, I can also use it to kind of reach out and grab things or point at something. You have all that capability also at the same time as you have the regular kind of capabilities of what you would do with a normal controller. So you kind of get to bridge the world between completely abstracted controls like the sticks and the buttons to this kind of spatial control where you can actually kind of reach in, point at things and pull them in. You can do some really neat things with kind of like telekinesis where you point at something and then push a button and it comes flying in towards you. So you can do those things really well with the DualShock as well.
And that additional point of a tracked object increases immersion, increases presence, increases comfort too. And comfort is really one of those make or break things for virtual reality. What are the things that you guys have done with the headset to make it comfortable for people who may not be comfortable in VR?
Well, I think there's a whole bunch of things that have gone into the design of the headset. The balance of it is really, really important. So, I mean, if you've ever seen us, we like to hold the middle of the headset and you can just balance it on one finger because it doesn't have any kind of torque either to the front or the back, so it doesn't pull on your neck at all, which is really good. It doesn't press on your face at all either, so there's no kind of marks on your face at the end when you get done. So you don't, because of that, you also don't get nearly as hot when you're inside of it. And then the other thing is it supports glasses very well, so being able to telescope it out and wear your glasses while you're playing is really important for people who need to do that.
Do you know how long the length of the cable is, and does that allow for certain types of games versus other types of games?
Yeah, so I believe the final cable design is 5 meters. That was what it was last I checked.
You need to get it from the PlayStation 4 to your couch, however that distance is. And the field of view of the camera is pretty wide also, so you can actually move around a little bit.
So the PlayStation camera, it has a 72-degree horizontal field of view. So actually the play space gets fairly big, fairly close to the camera. And so the way you can think about it pretty easily is if whatever distance you are away from the camera, you have a little bit wider play space than that. Now we are going to limit the play space of what you can actually move around in to be more like we kind of recommend a seated experience. You can do, that's what we're recommending to most of our developers. You could stand, but we're really not encouraging walking around at all.
The games will support that and be made for those type of experiences. Now, how does this change, for example, rating systems? Like, what does the ESRB think about this? Because content rating and comfort rating, are you guys thinking about that? Are you guys putting your own rating system in?
So that's still an ongoing thing that, all the different companies that are participating in VR are looking into. But I think that the same way we've participated in those standards in the past, that's always been something our company has done, and I expect that we'll do something like that going forward.
Finally, one big announcement you guys made was an exclusive coming, Battlefront, Star Wars. Anything you can share about how you're telling that team, how you're instructing them to make the game? What will Battlefront, what will Star Wars in PSVR be like?
So we're going to let the developer explain their game when it's ready. But I mean, the idea of bringing Star Wars and having a top-notch developer like Electronic Arts, bringing that to PlayStation VR, it's very exciting for us. I mean, who wouldn't want to visit the world of Star Wars? That's if you're going to make a list of all the worlds you'd want to visit, it'd probably be most people's top world. So it's a great place for VR to go, I think.
The fact that it's under the Battlefront franchise, maybe that's a little telling and type of hopefully more of an action game. That's my just personal preference.
Yeah, well, wait and see on that one.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rich. It's great to chat with you. Congratulations on the announcement, and we'll go play some games now.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Jeremy, that was like an afternoon, a full afternoon with PSVR. It's going to be like, it's the final hardware. The games are still obviously in development for the October launch, but learned some interesting things from my conversation with Dr. Richard Marks and also with the developers themselves. They're all very open about and frank about their development and their games.
Yeah, I found that too. I mean, a lot of these guys probably haven't had a chance to talk to a lot of people trying their games yet, so they're just as excited about this as we were.
Yeah, some interesting things. It turns out the cable, Richard said it was going to be about 5 meters, more like 4.5 meters.
Meters? Okay,
yeah,
that's pretty good.
4.5 meters, but they're really designing it to be a standing or sitting on a couch experience.
Kind of like an Oculus experience.
Right, kind of the front facing. They can track in the back, and there are definitely things we tried out where turning around.
Yeah, 360 is no problem for them.
Not a problem.
They're stating that as a benchmark, that you can do that.
But I think they're acknowledging that PS4 is going to be in the living room.
Yeah.
So the TV is going to be in front of you, and some games even switch between playing in VR to playing on the TV.
Yeah, asynchronously. Is that what you mean? So that one person plays on the TV and one person plays in VR?
Oh, no, in the single player. So one person, you would play portions of the game in VR and portions of the game in TV. That's definitely a possibility.
Sure.
The Breakout Box itself, we also learned that it actually doesn't do a lot of that frame doubling.
Right. Now, I asked one of the devs about that, and he was saying that the Breakout Box is really a splitter. It's like a pretty powerful splitter that takes the signal from the PlayStation and now puts it through the TV and the headset. But all of the rendering is on the PlayStation 4. So if you're going to do 120 hertz, 1080p rendering, that also means, and you also want to put out something through the TV, that's quite a lot of management you're going to have to do on resources and everything about the game engine from the ground up.
It is a closed system, so it's going to be more efficient at running up, but it's also several-year-old hardware, the PS4. Now, when we're talking about playing a game at 120 hertz on the headset, the max is actually rendering on the PlayStation is going to be 60 frames a second, and then you get doubled.
Right.
So it's doubling through things like asynchronous time warp, where it'll take the data from the gyroscope from the IMU, skew it in post, and then give you more frames than it's actually cranking out on the GPU.
I think saying like it's async time warp is appropriate, because I did ask one of the devs, is it asynchronous time warp? And they said, no, that's something different. So I'd be curious to learn more about how they're getting that higher frame rate on a technical level.
In some of the experiences, some of the games, I've definitely felt and saw the telltale signs of asynchronous time warp, which is a thing that's used for rotational tracking. So like I was moving my head side to side, you can see the edge of the screen wobble just a little bit, looking like it was being warped. It wasn't enough to make me uncomfortable or take me out of the game, but it was noticeable, and especially for people who've been using VR and playing games at 75 hertz, 90 hertz, and now 120 hertz.
It'll be interesting to see what titles support 90 or 120, if that causes any kind of a difference. I didn't notice any difference between the games that I played today. I'm sure some were running at 90 and some were running at 120, because I know some were running at 120 and some were just very geometry complex games that I don't think they would have. So I don't know if it's going to make that big of a difference, honestly. What do you think about that?
I was also asking developers about that, whether their game was being displayed at 90 or 120, and I couldn't tell the difference, frankly. The difference is that a game that plays at 90 is actually being rendered at 45. So it's being doubled from 45 to 90, which just means the game's probably more intensive. The first one of the last things we played, but we want to talk about first, is the Playroom VR, the thing that everyone's going to get for free, which is actually graphically taxing because it's rendering 2 viewports. One viewpoint for the living room and one viewpoint for your headset. The viewpoint for the living room, that TV actually only gets 720p, 30 FPS.
That's right.
And then, but the headset, you still get 120 or 60 double.
They're doing everything possible on the headset. They were doing 120, 1080p,
And those games, those little experiences, so much fun.
I think that's going to be a great game. I'm really impressed. I mean, I have the Playroom app that you can get for the camera, which is basically, it has robots in it, and you can interact with them a little bit, and it's very much a tech demo. This is done by, I think, the same team. And it has a lot of the same assets, but it's how many games did you say? Was it 6 games? And the ones that we played I think 3, they were pretty robust. I mean, there's a lot of good party game in there. It
feels like this is going to be the first Wii Sports, Wii Bowling party game. Get your family to play. Even if they don't even have to pick up a controller, because they're asynchronous games, asymmetrical games where the audience can just look at the TV and yell, and the person wearing the headset can respond, and it's a cooperative experience.
In one game, there were 4 mice and 1 cat. The person with the VR headsets is the cat, and they are behind a curtain, and as they move their head forward, it opens the curtains, and if the mice are out and about, then they get caught. If they're stopped, it's sort of like a red light, green light game. So if the mice are stopped, then they don't get caught, and the cat has to go back.
I imagine you with kids, they're gonna love that.
And we also saw that it has a microphone, because the person who's the cat, whenever they speak, they come through the speaker their pitch has been changed to more of a cat tone.
Yeah, and also there's a game where you're shooting bandits and a little smoke comes out and you can make a blowing motion, the microphone will pick that up, and you'll see then the smoke move.
Yeah.
So clever things like that.
Yep.
Now, the full titles that you have to pay for, what are some ones you liked and you tried out? BattleZone VR, that was your favorite?
I don't know. You know, I went into that thinking, okay, I'm kind of a sucker for nostalgia. BattleZone being a classic arcade game, they got me in the booth. However, it did end up being my favorite game of the show, I think. It's not wireframe style. It's definitely more of a modern Tron aesthetic where it's, you know, fully fleshed out geometry and textures. But it's a really well done cockpit tank game where you aim your reticule using your controls. You steer left and right the tank, and then you have an up and down control. But where you look doesn't affect where you're shooting. So you can look wherever you want, and you have your reticle aiming for shooting at the tanks and the turrets and the flying things. And it's just got this beautiful, glowy, you know, Tron-like aesthetic that I dig. And the gameplay was really solid. It didn't make me sick.
The movement was very smooth. The tank, the gliding motion.
Yes,
I think they did that to prevent huge acceleration.
Right, they take acceleration seriously where it's not too severe. It hits that sweet point, I think, between intensity and doesn't give
where you feel like skills required to get those leading shots.
Yeah.
When you're arcing and firing a cannon.
That's true too, yeah.
But you're also, because you're immersed in it, you have the situational awareness aspect where you can look to your left, look to your right, know that enemies coming from behind you. Yeah. And hopefully there's multiplayer. They said that it's something they're investigating. I bet there'll be multiplayer for that.
What about you? What was your favorite?
Well, speaking of multiplayer, one of the games that had multiplayer was Riggs. And that was a 3v3 experience we played. It's a mech game. You're still holding the controller. And you're in the mech suit. There's positional tracking, looking around your cockpit, and it's like a sports game, a mech sports game. You're firing each other, you're trying to kill each other, collect points, and jump through a hoop. I enjoyed the feel of that as well. I love the motion of the mech, the sense that you're a bigger, you know, even though your body, you feel like your body is sitting in a mech, so it's a larger than life experience. I had a lot of fun in that.
That's a little bit more intense than BattleZone in that you aim by looking, and you can also jump. So there's a lot more motion involved with that. And it's sort of like a basketball game where you are the ball and you have to jump into the hoop in the center and people try to defend it. It was pretty fun.
So from combat games, there's also going to be music games. You played a music game?
Thumper. Now this is by a 2-person team. It's their first game. They both used to work at Harmonix. They left on good terms and started their own company. And they're making this game that's going to be out on Steam for flat screen, but it's also going to be out on PlayStation simultaneously for VR and non-VR. And it's a really straightforward game. You're like this strange, glowy, spaceship that's going down this slide in this psychedelic outer space kind of environment. And it's a rhythm action game in that there's this music and you have to hit the buttons at the right time. You have to steer and smash into things. It's a very ethereal game. I think people are going to bliss out playing it, kind of a Res kind of style experience.
Okay.
But it's definitely intense, but it doesn't give you that motion sickness. Another one that walks that line.
It's more of a conceptual idea that's made possible by VR. And there's going to be experiences in games that are just more direct correlation to real world activities, like soccer. So one game was Headmaster, and super simple mechanic where you're just standing in front of your TV.
I think it's the only game here with no controller.
No controller. The soccer ball comes at you, and you move your body forward, lunge at it, and it'll hit the target or not hit the target, and you can practice. And it feels like a game that you need to not move your neck too much. You want to stiffen your neck to play, but you can also learn and get better over time.
You know, I was talking to the developer while you were playing, and he was saying that he used to have a randomness as to where the ball was thrown, but he had to take that out because there was so much randomness built into the way a human actually moves around and moves their head that he needed as much, stability as possible so that the human could learn how to deflect the ball properly. Right,
repetitions are important because there's a lot of information in the positional tracking of the headset, so you want to reward the user from actual practice. And of course the writing in that game is also like Job Simulator, very funny, tongue-in-cheek style writing, a lot of personality.
He said he was inspired by Portal. One game that was not my favorite, I would say, was Megaton Rainfall. This is a first-party game that's made by this guy, supposedly one developer for 3 years. And while it's certainly an interesting VR experiment, as a released game, it kind of worries me because it breaks some rules that I think a lot of the VR community have come together to respect and sort of appreciate for release games. I can see the other platforms really appreciating how do we accelerate the player in space? How do we give them a sense of context when we're moving them? Are they in a cockpit of some kind? This game, no cockpit. and a lot of fast acceleration. You're just this disembodied UFO defender that flies around the cityscape, and you gaze aim at aliens and try to aim for their weak zones, and you fire lasers at them. I mean, it all sounds kind of interesting, and I think as a concept, it sounds like the kind of game you'd be a lot of fun to play in VR, but it actually ends up causing problems with motion sickness, and I'm a little concerned about people who play this game. Hopefully, you know, I hope it's not their first VR experience, because this is the kind of thing that will turn people off.
Yeah, and one of the games I had concerns about was actually Golem, which got a lot of press, and visually it looks striking, like very polished visually, but mechanically, I'm not completely sold on how you move. So you play as characters from as small as a ragdoll all the way to a 15-foot golem, and instead of holding a controller move, it's all about leaning forward. Now, my first thought was, okay, because you're a lumbering golem, the whole lean to move mechanic might make sense. You can slow down the animation, have it catch up with you, but I just ended up leaning maybe too far and just didn't feel comfortable swaying my body to move this character forward. It was always too slow for my taste. And then one last sequence with that, I was holding a sword, and it was a sword fighting mechanic, and I don't know whether it was the tracking that wasn't perfect, maybe too many move controllers in the area, but it wasn't satisfying to block the shots and do very simple, you know, block 3 times and attack once. I think they could do better.
Watching you play, it seemed like you were making a lot of deliberate, sort of stilted movements.
Yeah, it was more game. It didn't feel natural.
Right.
It more felt like, okay, I'm just playing the game where I need to know I'm going to block once, then respond.
Right.
But we're still a ways out from these games being released.
Early days, right?
Yes.
For developers and all of us, we're still trying to figure all this stuff out, and they do have more time between launch and now than any other platform.
That's right. Like the 20 or so titles are showing here today. You know, they're in maybe the launch window, but I'm sure with Sony, they're working with 230 different developers. So
yeah, they're saying 50 games this year, before the end of the year,
That's
in
exciting.
VR.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot to be excited for, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more at E3, which I hopefully will be there to check that out. And hopefully you'll be there to check that out with us as well on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our videos, like this video. Let us know what you think about PlayStation VR. If you have a PS4, if that's something you're interested in getting in, price point's out now, availability is out now. I want to pick up those move controllers and camera.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you guys, and we'll see you next time. Bye.